Today's sponsor is Advancement Courses. Stay tuned at the end of the show for a special coupon for 20% off any of their grad level professional development courses. Today's episode 298 is a little bit of a mouthful. Flipping awesome physics with an asynchronous, flipped, gameful mastery classroom. Now, before you think, wow, that's so much, it's really pretty cool, and it's actually a little simpler than it sounds. Very cool idea on episode 298. Enjoy.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, we're talking with Jonathan Thomas Palmer from Michigan about physics. Now, John, you have recently implemented an asynchronous, flipped, gameful mastery learning classroom. Okay, let's break it down. That is a really long set of 5 words there.
Yes, it is. So I flipped my classes starting in 2013, and with the basic concept there is that you're taking the lectures and you're putting those at home, and the stuff that normally was done at home is now done in class. That's the basic idea of a flipped classroom. And one of the things that I'd always been searching for with the flipped classroom was how that was eventually going to change my classes. And it took me a long time to find it. And eventually I found it in the idea of gameful learning. So we'll start with that piece, which is school is already a game. And it's basically admitting that school is a game and making it very clear to the students what the rules of the game are. So at the start of second semester, I laid out the 5 or 6 rules of the game. And the first one is that everybody starts out with a 0, which is an entirely different way of looking at grading. So everybody starts with a 0 and you add points. So rather than getting percentages on assignments, you get points on assignments, and your grade never goes down, your grade only goes up. So this necessitates knowing every assignment that's going to be assigned for the entire semester and providing the students with all of those assignments right at the beginning, which was one of the major challenges of this.
Yeah, and how do you give parents a progress report when, halfway through the grade, you're 50 or what?
Basically, they know how many points they need in order to get what particular grade. And I have mandatory assignments, and then there are optional assignments. And there's a recommended order to go through all the assignments in, and there are different levels. So there's the work and energy level, the power and work due to friction level, the momentum and impulse level, as you can imagine. And so students go through the level, and they then decide what assignment they're going to do every day. So that's the asynchronous part. We're no longer all doing the same thing at the same time. The students come in and they decide what they're going to do. And it was really interesting. For the first 2 weeks, I would still have students ask me, what are we doing next time? Or is it okay if I do this? And my answer was always, I don't know. What do you think? Because you are now in charge of your own learning, which has been a challenge for some students, but really, I think, freeing for a lot of students. But it's taken a little bit of time for them to understand that concept.
I would think this would not only blow the minds of the students, but also your colleagues and maybe your administrators. Is that true?
So I was very careful to go to my administration. Actually, before I even started really working on it, I did some research about it and learned about it and knew that I wanted to do it. But I make sure that they were on board before I began actually working on it. And I've had some conversations with colleagues, and for the most part, people are very excited about it because it's a very different way of looking at education. And it's freeing for students as well because there are no due dates. So students get to decide when an assignment is done and turn it in.
So, but you still have certain expectations that they have to do.
Yeah.
So you're keeping them on track though, right?
Oh, yeah. So every day I check in. As you can imagine, I have now more time in class to talk individually with every student. So I check in with every student every day, seeing what they're doing and where they are and whether they're on target for where they need to be. I had one student last week who was like, can you just tell me when things are due? And I said, no, but how about you and I sit down with all of the assignments and come up with a schedule for you? So we sat down, we printed out all the assignments for the next, couple levels and decided, okay, by spring break, you want to be to this point. So let's figure out what you have to do. and he just needed somebody to help him figure out what his schedule was going to be. I had other students who sat down at the very beginning when I first gave the assignment, printed out every assignment, and decided what they were going to do and when for the entire semester. That was the first thing they did.
So do you feel like they're learning physics better?
I will just flat out, yes. I'll start there. I'll give one example. So we've done the asynchronous. So let's just do the flipped. I'll get back to your question in just a second. So the flipped portion is now, all the lectures are available and they can do them wherever they would like. So sometimes they do them at home, but sometimes they do them in class. So it's interesting how it's actually brought some of the lectures back in class. And I use Edpuzzle for all of my lessons. So I know who's watched what and when, which is awesome. So the mastery part is one of my favorite parts, which is they have to get an 80% on the quiz, which comes at the end of every level, in order to level up and be able to move on to the next level. And I've always struggled with those students who do okay in class, but they struggle with the quizzes because that's just something they struggle with. They struggle with being able to show that they know what they're doing. So I have a couple of kids that fit in that category, and all through first semester, because I switched at second semester, they were struggling. And it's been okay, you got a D on the first quiz, but it's no longer an issue of, that's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. You know what that means? You get to sit with me now during the next class, and I'm going to help you make sure you understand everything that you did there. And after you do quiz corrections, which they work on with me, and I make sure that they understand everything that they're doing, if you have above an 80%, so they can earn back half the points with a quiz correction, if you get above an 80%, you get to graduate that level and move on to the next level. If not, you retake the quiz, and once you get above 80%, you're good. You can move on. It's been actually really helpful because it's targeted those students who are really struggling and given me more time to work with them. It's been really fun.
So, John, do you have some students, though, who like to work together? And do you think they're honest as they do that?
Okay, so one of the great things is the majority of the work that they do is working together in class. I'm with them and constantly checking in with them, and they're asking me questions. Okay, so they're working side by side, I'll say, but they're each working individually on their assignments. And basically, because a lot of the time that they spend working on it is in class with me, I can basically make sure that they're doing it.
So, John, what's the most shocking result of this transformation?
I would say how freeing it is for the students with their busy schedules. For example, I have a student who had to be gone for 3 weeks to do auditions for colleges for music. He's going to college for flute performance. And he had to go to like 8 different colleges and do auditions, and he was gone for 3 weeks. And so he's not behind, right? Because he was able to do a lot of this stuff on his own. And even though he's not quite with the rest of the class, he's not behind because there is no schedule. He's just catching up right now. I have another example of a student who was a couple of students who knew they were going to be absent on a particular day. So they actually worked ahead so that they could, on a particular day, do the lab before they left so that they could work on it while they were gone. Like, that was shocking to me that the kids would have the foresight to say, okay, we know we're going to be gone, so let's work ahead on our own, come in, ask a few questions, and then do the lab. That's just awesome.
If you were stuck in an elevator with a teacher who was considering this method of starting at zero, what would be your 30-second elevator pitch for why this is a great way to run your classroom?
It is a great way to run your classroom because it transfers the ownership of the student's learning to the student. And once the student realizes and comes to terms with the fact that they are in control of their own learning, they are much more invested in their own learning and interested in learning.
This is quite a mouthful. Asynchronous flipped gameful mastery learning. And it's a fascinating concept, and it is truly a wonderful Classroom Wednesday today. And I hope that we all think about it. It's certainly something I'm fascinated with, John, and thanks for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Vicki. This was a lot of fun.
Need some great professional development? Today's sponsor, Advancement Courses, has more than 200 graduate-level online professional development courses for K-12 teachers. You can take these courses for continuing education, salary advancement, or recertification. And these courses have us teachers developing tangible resources to use in our classrooms immediately. Go now to advancementcourses.com/coolcat and use the code COOL20 at checkout to get 20% off any course. With this coupon, a 3 grad credit course is only $359. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat to learn more and use the coupon code COOL20. Never stop learning.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.